Hello and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Jean Farish, and once again we're here to talk about all kinds of needlework related topics. But first, I would be remiss in not reminding you to subscribe, and if you want to get notice when there's a new FlossTube, then just hit that bell icon and you'll always be in the know. So I am a huge college basketball fan. And so I've been watching a lot of basketball these last few weeks. And tonight, while I'm making this video, we're in the very next to the last day of the ACC tournament. And when you're a Virginia native, go Cavaliers. But you live in Winston-Salem, go Wake Forest. And have had an on-again, off-again love relationship with Carolina for many, many years. Go Tar Heels. But you are a fan of the new Duke coach, Coach Shire, then you are ready to cheer for the Blue Devils. So I have had a lot of good basketball to watch. So I'm making this video tonight with one eye on what's going on in the game. And so I'm getting to do two of my loves at the same time here, which is fantastic. So let me get into the nitty gritty here by starting with cruise news. The 2023 cruise out of Boston, where we're going to be exploring New England and Nova Scotia and that eastern part of Canada, and even sailing all the way down the St. Lawrence Seaway to Quebec City and back again to Boston. That cruise is sold out and has been for a while, and we're in the middle of registering everybody for their onboard classes and the special excursions we have planned for the ports of call. So we have that to look forward to this fall for those who are signed up for it. 2024 is on everybody's mind right now. This is a cruise with a story. So in 2020, we planned this fantastic cruise to go all the way around the British Isles with visits in Wales, England, Scotland, and Ireland. And of course, we all know what happened in 2020. So we tried again in 2022, and Europe wasn't quite opened up enough at the point at which we had to make a go, no-go decision. And we had a fantastic Zoom meeting with everyone that was registered for the cruise, and got input from everyone and explained what the situation was and where we were. And we pretty much unanimously decided that it was not the right time to do that cruise. So our theme for 2024 is third time's a charm. And we are just as excited, in fact, maybe even more excited about this cruise. So last week we opened registration for 2024 to all the people who were registered for 2020 and 2022. We figured it was only fair to kind of give them first dibs. But on Saturday, March 25th, we're going to open registration to everyone. So if you have any interest in this whatsoever, I really recommend you do a couple things. First of all, subscribe to our newsletter. I should say our mailing list. It's very easy to do. Please don't ask me to subscribe you. It doesn't work that way. We use a mailing list that's very, very particular. And we can't just add people. People need to add themselves. So all you have to do is go to the stitchersescapes.com website and go to the contact page, and then choose, I think, contact details, it'll say. Anyway, you scroll down just a little bit and there'll be a place to subscribe to our mailing list. Now, we do not share mailing list information with anyone, and we do not flood your inbox with lots of emails. We basically just send them out when we have something new to share with everyone. So the other thing to do, or actually I should say, while you're at the stitchersescapes.com website, click on the thing that says events, and there'll be a drop down menu, and pick 2024 British Isles, and that will take you to the page where you'll see the all important information, the itinerary, the dates, the fares, everything you need to know about the cruise. So I would really suggest strongly that if you're interested, start talking to your friends now. And if you prefer to share a cabin with somebody, which basically cuts the cost in half, start talking to your friends now, and line up somebody to register with you on the 25th. So it's gonna be a great cruise, and knock on wood, as we say in the South, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we're going to the British Isles in 2024. So I think that's about it I need to tell you about the cruises. Now, a little closer to home and much sooner on the calendar, I have classes coming up in Surfside Beach, South Carolina at Barefoot Needleart, and in Greensboro at Stitch Point on Friendly. I'll be at Barefoot on April 29th for one all-day class, and it features the assembly process for one of my favorite finishing techniques, which is, I call it the linen finishing stitch. It allows you to make a 3D object out of your cross stitch. And we'll be making this cute little scissor fob. And although mine was made for a cruise, in the empty space you can really put anything. You can put the name of the the shop where you took the class, a favorite little quote, and of course your initials, the date, whatever you want. And of course there's 3 sides, so you've got 3 ways to express yourself. And then I'm also, in that same class, I'm also teaching everything you need to know about making twisted cord. And this is very much a hands-on workshop. You will come away with the knowledge and kind of a tool that's sort of like a guide that will allow you to know exactly how many strands of floss you need to make different size cords. And we'll also talk about 3-color and 4-color cords as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And I mean, what can be better? A cross-stitch class at the beach with your friends, whether you come with a stitching buddy or come by yourself to meet a whole new group of stitching friends. It's going to be a great day. So that's coming up in April. Now, a little closer to home, closer to my home, Stitch Point on Friendly in Greensboro, I've got 5 classes coming up in May and June. The first one I'm calling Cross Stitch 101. It's geared toward a beginner or somebody who just wants to brush up on their cross stitch, getting back into it. Besides actually learning how to do the cross stitch, we'll be talking about tools, techniques, tips, just kind of everything you need to know about enjoying this hobby that we enjoy so much. And then there I have 4 needlepoint classes that follow that one, including this cute little Christmas ornament that you saw in progress on an earlier episode. So I'm really, really pleased about how this one turned out, and that's going to be one of the exciting choices. Now, in both cases, with Stitch Point and with Barefoot, the thing to do to register is to contact the shop, and I'll put all the details that you need as far as email addresses, phone numbers, etc. in the episode description. Okay, I just checked on the game. Now I'm back on the topic of cross stitch. So 2 quick FAQs, and these were really sweet emails for me, because they came from people who watch this YouTube and have corresponded with me in the past about what's going on with their cross stitch life. And they're both really, really good questions. So the first one came from Mary, and she said she had a needle-related question. So what she wrote was, now I'm retired and I'm getting back to stitching, but I'm concerned with trying to use cross-stitch needles again, which I found to be inordinately slender, short, and cramp-causing. So I wonder how large a needle I can use on linen that won't permanently enlarge the holes, allowing the linen to fall back into the correct size. I was thinking of longer, larger needlepoint needles, but realized the eye size may be too big. Do you have any suggestions worth trying out? So I gave a little bit of thought to this question because it really has a couple different elements. First of all, to clarify, there is no difference. No, let me back up. Cross-stitch needles and needlepoint needles are both tapestry needles. The difference in them is the needle size, which relates to the ground cloth. In the case of cross-stitch, whether you're using Aida, Lugana, Jobelin, linen, whatever, tends to certainly be a finer count than needlepoint canvas, which, so cross-stitch, let's just say a middle ground is in the 30, 32, 28 count linen, which stitched over 2. Let's use those numbers instead. So like a 14, 16, 18 count fabric, whereas needlepoint sort of starts at an 18 count mono canvas, and then you've got 14, 13, and 10. So the canvas requires a much larger needle because the count's larger. And also, in order to stitch and get good coverage on those larger counts, then you need a larger thread, which requires a larger eye. So in both types of needlework, we use tapestry needles, and a tapestry needle basically has a blunt tip. It's doesn't have a fine, sharp tip like an embroidery needle. And that confuses a lot of beginners because they say, wait a minute, I'm confused here. Isn't cross-stitch embroidery? Well, it is. The difference, though, is in embroidery, like surface embroidery, you are actually piercing the fabric, whereas in cross-stitch and needlepoint, you are stitching between the ground cloth threads. No matter what you are stitching, you're basically not piercing the fabric. You're going into deliberately created holes between the threads in the various ground cloths. So therefore you don't want a sharp needle because you want the point of the needle to glide between threads and not go into the threads. So I hope that makes sense, but that's why we use tapestry needles. There are people say we use tapestry needles so you don't prick your finger and draw blood. That's sort of a side benefit, but that's not why we use tapestry needles in cross-stitch and needlepoint. So that's the first thing to clarify with this. The second thing is that Mary would need to experiment a little bit, but I am thinking that once you wash and iron your fabric, the threads are going to come back together. Now, I'm sure there's a point at which if you took an extreme, like you're stitching with a number 20 needle on a fabric that you normally would use a 26, that might make a difference. So that's and my glasses are getting, as I'm bouncing my head, my glasses are getting ready to fall off. I am just full of distractions tonight. So, okay, so that I think clarifies that. So let's actually take a look at a couple of tapestry needles. And by the way, I love this little needle case. I'm going to add a lobster claw type hook to this so I can easily add it to my floss rings when I'm with whatever project I'm stitching on. So I have everything. I have a 28, 26, 24, I'm going to skip this for a minute, 22 and 20 needle. Now, typically a cross stitcher wouldn't quite need this range, but because I stitch both cross stitch and needlepoint, this was great for me because I could put all my needles in one place. So you can see just the difference in, let me come in closer here, just looking at the difference of the size of the eyes, you can tell, roll this one over a little bit, how much, how different they are. And of course the length is different. So I'll just pull the 28 out and the 20, so you can really see the difference between them. So again, this one I use when I'm stitching with linen. This one I use when I'm stitching with a large count needlepoint canvas. And then in the middle here, I have this little tool that, oh, what's it called? Whatchamacallit, I'll think of it and put it in the episode description. But I never really know where to keep it. And so once I got this little needle holder, it was perfect because I can just slide it right in there. And these are pretty firm. I was concerned that the needles would fall out too easily, but they really don't, even the fine ones. So I'm really liking this, and it comes in different colors, which is always fun. And I'm going to be putting it in my Etsy shop. I have a pretty good supply right now, and I just haven't bothered with a listing. I've been too busy watching basketball. So, okay, so that, I think, clarifies that. So my suggestion to Mary, and she already got this response from me, was just to experiment on a small project and see which type of needle, which size needle she can handle the best that doesn't leave any permanent damage to her fabric. So that was kind of a fun, well, maybe not fun for Mary, but a fun question for me to answer because it had so many different parts to it. And I love helping educate people as they're struggling with how to make this hobby workable for them when they're facing various challenges. So that always gives me a great deal of gratification. And then I got a great question from Ron. He is somebody that I've communicated with about his various projects, and I always love to hear from him. So this is what he wrote to me. He said, my current project has me asking a question I'm sure you've encountered before. And by the way, you don't need to take notes when I start throwing these figures out. The chart measures 91 by 91 for 5" by 5" design. So the 91 by 91 is the number of stitches across and down, and the 5" by 5" is how big the design is going to be when he's finished stitching. I'm almost finished and decided to do a quick measurement and found that it measured 5" by 5 1/8". I double counted and my stitch count is correct. I'm thinking it's due to the varying thickness of the linen threads. So first of all, when I responded to Ron, I let him know that I'm just so happy that he's really enjoying his linen projects, because that was kind of new for him. So I did some quick math, and if he's working a design that's 5" by 5" with that thread count of 91 by 91, and he's stitching over 2, then the linen that he's working on must be labeled a 36 count linen. So over 2, that's 18 stitches per inch. So what I told him is, using a very scientific term, that his fabric was just a little bit out of whack. In other words, it's not exactly 36 threads per inch in each direction. What I shared with him was that if he takes the stitch count of 91 by 91 and changes it to a thread count, he's stitching over 182 by 182. So when you divide each one of those by the measurements he gave me, one thread count in one direction is 36.4 threads to inch, and the other one is 35.5 threads per inch. So it's not very far off. I would not have thought of this fabric as being an uneven weave linen. So to go back to answering his original question, this isn't a matter of the thickness of the threads, but the distance between the threads, how they're woven, as far as the number of threads per inch. Now, the important thing here is if it's 1/8 of an inch out when you're dealing with a 5x5 design, imagine how out of whack it would be if you were doing a sampler of some size or any kind of design that when you finish would be, say, 20 inches by 20 inches. Now, if you're custom framing, not a big deal. I don't think the human eye would see the difference. But if you were planning to put it in a pre-made square frame, then that could make a difference. Bottom line, in all these cases, when you get that piece of linen, if the actual finished size is going to matter to you, do a thread count. Just in a 2-inch area, just go over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, both across and down, so that you know yourself exactly how many stitches you're going to get in a 2-inch area. And I say that because you'll get a more accurate reading of the number of threads per 1 inch if you measure it over 2 inches and then divide it in half. Because let's say if it ended up being, say, 28.5, you may not be able to discern that, but if you do it, measure it over a 2-inch span, then you'll really be able to see it. So Ron's going to be fine with that. Anyway, so I'm going to get back to the game now. Halftime's over, and my team is ahead. I won't tell you which team it is, but if you follow basketball and you're watching this in real time, you'll know. So, as always, stitch happy, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.